So I've got a private message. My divorce application got accepted a month back, and it said I have to wait until the 21st of December for the next stage. Yes. So you're at that beginning stage. You've already applied. Finances, trying to settle out of court, and what is a fair settlement? Okay. Really important if you can to settle out of court, because court proceedings are quite stressful, they're complex, expensive, and the judge tells you to try and agree out of court as well. Just been hit with the bombshell and saw your program details on Facebook. So sorry that you have just found out that this is going to be happening. It's all about you becoming empowered, learning as much as you can about the process. It's important that we help you manage this process, keep your costs down. And, these sessions are for that reason. They are there to help you get knowledge and make the best decisions for you as well. So, thank you for joining. Okay, so I am currently separated from my husband, seeking a legal separation. I believe it will end in divorce. I had given my papers to my husband in 2021, but gave him time as he wanted to change. Circumstances changed, and then I am still here, ready to start again. And to the person that sent that message, these things happen. We will make a decision, and sometimes it maybe wasn't the right time. Maybe you just wanted to make sure that if that person could change, that you'd give them that opportunity to change. And now maybe it's the right time for you. And it's always important to go forward when it's the right time for you. Because it is a difficult process and it is a big change of life. So you want to make sure it's the right time. I've only been separated for 3 months, was domestic violence case, and he is currently on bail. I don't really have money for solicitors at the moment. Yeah, really difficult, isn't it, to find the funds to get help. Solicitors on average charge 18,000 per person. And that's why it is such an expensive process. So I do completely get that. I'll tell you a little bit about how I work at the end, which is a little bit different to traditional solicitors. And the person that just asked that question, I will come to your question at the end. So I'm just going to share my screen. But, if you do have questions, put them in the chat box and we'll come to them at the end. I will be keeping an eye on the chat box while I'm talking. So if there's anything that comes up for you, then while I'm talking, then feel free to message me on the chat box, even privately, because if I'm saying something and you've got some comments or something that could help somebody, then it's always good to hear from you as well. So before I start, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, because I know that there are some of you that haven't been to these sessions before, so you might not know who I am. And really important that you know a bit about me before I start talking. So my name is Bhavna Radia. I qualified as a family lawyer when I was early 20s, I think about 23, 24. And it's what I've always done. I've always been interested in family law when I was studying. So it's something that was a passion of mine, really. And I felt I was empathetic and clients could get good service from me because I was compassionate and really understood what they were going through. I got married in 99, long time ago. And me and my ex-husband now have 3 children. The girls are much older now. But after I was married about 15 years, I decided that I was going to go through a divorce process. And it wasn't that I woke up one morning and made that decision. And you will understand this. You agonize over it for so long. It was something I'd been thinking about for many, many years, but I was just too scared to take that step. And that's somebody who has legal knowledge and has, gone through many divorces with their clients. And I was too scared to take that step. Because when it happens to you, it is the scariest thing to go through because your whole life is turned upside down. And especially when you have got children, it's very, I was very worried about what would happen to them, how I would bring them up, how I would financially manage as well. So many things went on at that time. It took me a while to get through the divorce process. And it's been 13 years actually since I made that decision to get divorced. 13 years next week that I made that decision. And you'll understand that it does take many years, many months to actually come to that realization and to do something about it. The divorce wasn't as smooth as I would like it to have been. Obviously, we all start off hoping that things can be amicable. And it was really tricky. We did manage to agree it all in the end and get to a financial consent order at the end of the process. It was difficult. My mental health suffered. My children's mental health suffered. So I did come to the realization at the end of that process that actually I wanted to offer a different service to my client because I now understood how they actually felt. And I wanted to bring a different service, a more holistic approach to divorce, and actually something that was fixed fee, because it's such a worry having the thought of spiraling legal costs at the end of this process as well. But I'll tell you a little bit about that at the end. So today I'm talking about pensions. And the reason why I'm talking about pensions, it's a subject that most people don't want to talk about. Clients really don't like talking about their pensions. A lot of people will say, can we just leave pensions out of this? It can be because they're worried. It might be because they don't really understand their pension. And there's been a lot of reports recently showing that pensions are generally being disregarded in divorce, especially by women. And when it comes to retirement, then people haven't made correct provision for themselves, leading them to be in a difficult position later on. So that's why we do need to consider pensions. And a lot of people will say to me that the reason why they don't look at pensions is because they don't necessarily understand them. And I think it's really interesting. And I know when I went through my divorce, I had a certain amount of understanding about pensions, and yet we did still leave our pensions out of the process. But it's really important to consider what is going to happen to you on retirement when you are getting divorced. So we do need to think about this, and I'm going to go through this not in so much detail, a little bit of detail, because obviously we've got a time restriction, but just enough to get you started. So what is a pension? And lots of people will say to me, I don't really understand my pension. And it can be a little bit complicated. And I guess that's why people just ignore them. It's a little boring, they're not the most fun of subjects, but it's important to understand your pension and important to understand what you can do with your pension during a divorce. And obviously, I'm not an expert on pensions. I can help you with family law, and obviously, I have knowledge of lots of things, but I'm not an expert on pensions. So I'll give you some simple information about this subject. You may need to speak to a pensions expert depending on what your pension looks like. So we do need to get a value of pensions, and I'll tell you a little bit about how to do that. But what we need to think about is, what is your pension? And it is a tax-efficient saving method for retirement. Basically, what happens is that you and maybe your employer pay into this pot called your pension, and you get tax relief on the pension contributions you make. And obviously, the earlier you start paying into a pension, the greater the pot will be when you actually retire. And especially if your employer has put equal contributions into your pot, this pot is growing, and it means that you will have a nice amount of money coming in when you are no longer working. Ideally, your pension pot will grow. as you're paying into it, and the value of your investments will rise, but sometimes the value can fall as well. But what we do is that pensions are paid into over such a long period. Generally, they do go up. And the interesting thing about pensions, which people forget about, that you can take a tax-free lump sum at 55. You can take 25% of your pension pot out as a lump sum, and it's tax-free, which is good. But this can be used as part of your divorce settlement. So it may be that we add a plan in place where at 55 you take out this lump sum and you pay off your remaining mortgage. Or maybe you need to pay the other person a lump sum, which you don't have right now. We can put in that at 55, you will take 25% of your pension out and you will pay that to the other person as a lump sum. So your pension can still be used creatively as part of your divorce process. Different types of pension, and sometimes people don't know what kind of pension they've got. The state pension you've probably heard about. The state pension is a standard pension that the government will pay you when you reach state pension age. To be eligible for the UK state pension, you must have reached state pension age and paid at least 10 years of NI contributions, national insurance contribution. To get the full state pension, you must have paid 35 years of national insurance contribution. So really important you understand that. Some people will include their state pension as part of their divorce process. Most people leave it out, but some people do get a value of their state pension as well. Workplace pension. So many of you will have a workplace pension. This is a pension that's arranged by your employer. And usually both you and your current employer will be contributing into the workplace pension. When you say you've had 5 jobs, you may find that you've got 5 pots, pension pots, that you've been paying into. So as you start a job, your employer organizes a pension as part of their scheme. You both pay in. When you leave that company, you will move somewhere else and your new employer will start another pension. And it is possible to consolidate all your pensions into one pot. And a pensions advisor or a financial advisor can help you with that, because you can save money on fees when you consolidate it into one pot. But the way your pension will work is that your current employer is contributing into your pension, and so are you when it is a workplace pension. There's different types of workplace pension. One is a defined contribution pension, and this is where the pension pot is based on the amount you pay in, and also the performance of the investments as well. So you will be paying in, your investments hopefully will be going up, and your pension pot will be increasing. A defined benefit, sometimes also known as a final salary pension, is a very valuable pension. And this is where you get a set income based on your salary. And if it's a final salary pension based on your final salary, and dependent on how long you've worked for your employer. And each of these defined benefit schemes are different. So you need to have a look at your scheme if you think you've got a defined benefit scheme, and work out what benefits you get as part of that pension. And again, when you're going through a divorce, it's important to know what type of pension you've got. And the reason why that is if you did go for a particular order, like a pension sharing order, you might choose the pension that you want to share from. Most people don't want to share their defined benefit pension or final salary pension. They would prefer to share from a defined contribution pension, because the defined benefit pension is very valuable and you want to keep as much money there as possible. And sometimes the value of the defined benefit pension is more than the actual value that the pension company gives you. And finally, a personal or private pension. This is one that you've set up yourself, and this is something you pay into yourself. And it does also include SIPS pensions, which you may have heard of. These are self-invested personal pensions. And you are actually buying investments into a pension yourself. So you are self-investing into a pension. So SIPs are part of a personal or private pension scheme. With a personal pension, you control how much you pay in and how often you pay that in as well. You can have a personal pension even if you're part of a workplace pension as well. If you're self-employed, then you might decide to set yourself up on a personal pension so that you can save for your retirement. As I said, a SIPP is a type of pension where the investment decisions are entirely your own. You can either manage it yourself or you can ask a professional to manage it for you, like a financial advisor. Now that you know a little bit about the type of pension that you can have, it's interesting for you to go back and work out what pension you've got. So have a look at your pension information, have a look at the benefits that you get under that scheme, so that you fully understand the type of pension you've got. But once you know that, then you need to think about how your pension is valued as well, because we can't decide what to do with the pension on divorce until we know what the value is. And your pension is valued on divorce by getting something called a cash equivalent value from your pension provider. So for each pension that you have, you should contact your pension provider by email, telephone. You might have an online portal. Contact them and ask for the cash equivalent value. Some pension providers call it a CE value, but it's always the same thing that you need to get from your pension provider. And this is used for divorce purposes only. And this is what the court will expect to see. So important to get it. And you should ask for it very early on because some pensions can take 12 weeks, sometimes even longer to get this to you. But also bear in mind that once they've sent you a CE value or cash equivalent value, they may charge you for a second one. So you need to have a look at that. They may say that we'll give you one a year for free. The second one, third one is payable at a certain amount. So you then need to decide when you get your valuation because you don't want it to be too out of date once you start negotiations as well. You'll get a summary with this cash equivalent value, a summary of your pension, the benefits under that pension, and you will also get full conditions around your pension. So the kind of things they will tell you is the type of pension you've got, the benefits that pension gives, whether that pension it's possible to do a pension share, what costs there are of a pension share, and obviously they'll give you the value of it as well. Then once you've got that, what you do with it, what you do with that pension as part of your divorce depends on your circumstances, depends on what's important to you. Pensions are just one part of this jigsaw when working out an agreement around your matrimonial assets. To reach a fair agreement, you need to look at everything. You need to look at all the assets that you've got. You need to look at what your pension scheme is, what type of scheme it is, and what benefits it gives you, and also what is fair under the law as well. Once we know what there is in your pot, and in your pot will be maybe property, there may be investment property, there could be ISAs, savings, jewelry, all sorts of different things could be there in your pot. And what we are looking at is how we share everything that there is. So we need to look at income as well. And all of these things are called assets. And we have to share this in a way that meets the needs of your children, if you have children, and then meets your needs as well. Pensions are really different to all other assets. With a family home, there's lots of different things that you could do with that. And you could do something with it today. You could liquidate that today. You could sell it and get your money out. You could transfer it into somebody's name. There's lots of things that could happen even with something like a family home. With a pension, it's fixed. There's not much you can do with it now. Unless you're 55, you can't get a lump sum out, and it's not going to pay out until you're at retirement age. So it's a very different asset. It's not as liquid. The overall aim of your finances is to get a fair outcome for both of you and your children. But to get to this, it doesn't mean that everything is shared 50-50. So the family home is split 50-50, everything else is 50-50, and so are pensions. That isn't necessarily right, depending on your circumstances. It might be correct, but we won't know that until we know your circumstances. So there's lots of things. There's your needs, there's health, there's differences in age, how long you've been married, how many dependent children you've got, and what their needs are as well. So lots of things that we need to consider when we look at what is fair for you in your circumstances. But when it comes to pensions in itself, there's only a few things that we can do. And I'm going to take you through them. You can see them there on the slide. The first one is pension sharing. And I've talked about this a little bit already, and you may not understand what pension sharing is. But pension sharing is something that you can only do when you have started divorce proceedings. So I know that somebody said that they are looking at separation first, and eventually it will lead to divorce. When you are separating, you can't get a pension sharing order. It can only be done as part of divorce proceedings, just so that you're aware of that. And a pension share is where you take money out of one person's pot and it is put into another pension pot. So it's not money that you can take and it goes into your bank account. It has to go from one pension pot to another. And you don't physically get the money. It is done by the pension companies as well. So it's not something that you will get in your hand to move to your pension. It will be done by a financial advisor, or the pension companies will organize that. So we would need a pension sharing order to let the pension company know how much of your pension or the other person's pension needs to be moved. And it has to be done by way of percentage, because pension values go up every day or down every day. So because they change every day, you wouldn't necessarily put £100,000 of that person's pension is being moved. It would always be a percentage. So if that person has got a pension of 200,000 and you were hoping to take 100,000 out, as part of that, you would say 50% of their pension needs to be moved into my pension. And it may be that that £100,000 pension is now 105,000, a £200,000 pension is now 205,000. And obviously you'll get the benefit of that. If it's gone down, obviously you won't get quite 100,000, you'll get slightly less. But it has to be a percentage. And just because it's called pension sharing, that doesn't mean equal sharing. It could be that 30% gets transferred as part of a pension share. And what the aim is of a pension share is to try and get you to an equal income on retirement. So it may be a different percentage that's needed. And that percentage, how do you calculate that? That's a question I get all the time. Some people would say, well, to make all the numbers fair, it's 100,000 that needs to be transferred. That may not give you equal income on retirement, which a pension share is supposed to give. But some people will say that's how we want to do it, and that's okay. If you have a pension that is quite big, you might want to get a bit more information about what percentage is fair. So it might be that a fair percentage to give you both the same income needs to be 20% of a pension pot. And there may be reasons why that is, and the reasons can be quite complicated. It's quite a complex formula working out that percentage. And so you might need to get a pension report prepared for an expert to say, to get equal income, it needs to be 30%, for example. Because if your pension pot is 300,000, every percentage makes a difference. So that's what a pension sharing order would be. And you can choose this as part of your divorce process, especially, for example, where maybe there's limited funds. And the only way of equalizing what's there is by a pension sharing lump sum being transferred into one person's pension. So this is how it works. Most private pensions and workplace pensions can be shared, but you do need to look at the terms and conditions of your pension. Some of them can't be. And also some of them are worth sharing and some of them aren't. So for example, you may have 3 pensions. One is a final salary pension. Ideally, you don't want to share that one. And the other one might be just a defined contribution pension, which you might say, okay, that's one that I could share, but there may be fees of £5,000. And then it may not be worth you doing a pension share out of that pension. You might choose another one. So there are fees sometimes, and you need to look at your terms and conditions. What's the benefit of a pension share? The courts really like pension sharing. And this means that both parties have got provision on retirement as well. So there's definitely a benefit to it. What's the benefits? When you get a pension share into your pension, so you take a bit out of the other person's pension pot and it comes into your pension pot, you own it straight away. It's not something that you'll get on their retirement. You will get that pension pot straight away, that pension sharing amount straight away. It's not affected by your ex dying. It's not affected by you remarrying, anything else. It becomes yours straight away. You get to choose the pension that you put the money in. And later on, you get to decide what you want to do with your pension pot. You might decide later on to take that 25% out at 55 and pay off your mortgage, for example. So, you've got autonomy over your pension pot once you've done a pension sharing. The disadvantages can be that pension sharing can be expensive. If there's fees involved in taking the money out of one pension, they may charge. The pension that you're putting the money into may charge. You might need to get a pension report, and that can be expensive. So that can be about £2,000 to get that report to work out how to share your pension fairly. And so obviously there can be expenses. Some people will not get a pension expert to prepare a report, and maybe their pension companies don't charge a fee, so then it isn't as expensive. Some pension companies will say you have to work with a financial advisor to actually do the administrative work for a pension share. So again, this will be noted down in your terms and conditions, so you need to have a look at it. Because if it costs you £2,000 to take a £10,000 pension share, it may not be worth it because the costs are so high. And usually the parties will share the costs of a pension share. So have a think about that. Pension sharing is what the court consider when there is a reasonable sized pension pot. So it's just something to bear in mind. The second way of sharing a pension during a divorce is offsetting. And I think this is one of the most popular ways of dealing with pensions. It doesn't always lead to the fairest outcome, so just bear that in mind. And this is what courts are saying, and the reports that we've seen, that lots of people are offsetting, and it's not always the fairest way of dealing with things. Offsetting is where, say, one person decides to take, say, the family home, and the other person says, instead of the family home, I'll keep my pension pot. And so you're offsetting what you would have got into the family home. So you're deciding to take another asset today rather than get the benefit of that pension pot in the future. Lots of couples choose this. Sometimes it's the only option available. For example, because one person, say the person that will be the main carer of the children, they possibly could be working part-time because the children are quite young and they can't get, they won't be able to buy another property. And so it's agreed that the family home stays with them, and it may not be transferred today, it may be transferred in the future, but the plan is that the family home is theirs and the other person keeps the pension instead. So sometimes it's the only option. Sometimes the fees for a pension share are so expensive it's not worth doing. Sometimes the pension pot is not big enough to make it worth doing. So obviously there's lots of options and we have to look at your circumstances to decide what is best. The problem with offsetting is that it's very hard to compare a family home with a pension because they're so different as assets. So it can be quite tricky working out what's fair. If you decide to trade your right to a share of the other person's pension, then you might, lots of people think that's a really good outcome. I've got the family home today, they get their pension pot in the future. But what you might then not have is a retirement fund for yourself. And they might need capital to be able to buy a property, so that there can be an issue with offsetting. Often people worry about today, they're not thinking about retirement. But as part of the divorce process, you do need to think about your retirement as well. Especially if you haven't got a very big pension pot. And I know with my clients, that's something I go through. And I know it's something that people worry about as well. So do think about what you are going to do from a point of view of pensions. Offsetting is one option. It doesn't always lead to the fairest outcome. So that's a disadvantage, but sometimes there is no other option. And the benefit is that it might meet what is important to you. You might say that out of everything, keeping the family home is absolutely my priority. I'm not bothered about pensions right now. What I'll do on retirement is rent out the family home. Maybe I'll have the capital to buy something smaller. Maybe I'll sell the family home, but buy something smaller, or buy two properties, one to live in and one to rent out, so that I've got funds for retirement. And obviously, with a pension pot, you know you're going to get a certain amount on retirement. If you put funds in the bank account and you're thinking, I'll just use these funds every year, you might run out of money. So it's just making sure that you've covered all of this before you decide on a pension offset. The final thing is a pension attachment, and it's the least popular way of dealing with pensions. Clients don't like it, but also courts don't like it very much either. And under this order, a percentage of the pension income that you would have received would go to the other person on your retirement. So, and vice versa, if you've got a pension attachment order that goes the other way. So it would be a percentage that you would keep, a percentage the other person is given. So this is only on retirement when you start taking retirement income. It can be a good way of dealing with it because both of you get a percentage of the income. And you could see that it could work quite well. But the downside of it is that the person who owns the pension may not retire very quickly because they know that you are going to get a percentage and they will put that off, put that off, put that off. And sometimes people use this. Also, if that person dies, the person that you'll be getting the income from that holds the pension, then that goes with them and you won't get that income on retirement. So it is a bit of a worry because if that person dies, you get nothing. But also if you remarry, then you won't get your pension attachment either. So because of these issues, people don't use pension attachment as an option, and you won't hear about it very often. So what's your next steps? You're thinking, okay, you've given me all this information. I've got somewhere to start. What shall I do now? The first step out of everything is to get your value. Find out the value of your pension. It depends, most things depend on what assets there are. So we need the value of everything. We need the value of the family home, what mortgage there is, what bank accounts there are, investments. And equally, we need the value of your pension because that's the only way we can assess what's in the pot. So once you have contacted your pension provider and got the value, then you need to look at the terms and conditions as part of your pension. You'll understand a bit more once you've seen that. So if you have a defined benefit scheme, then you need to make sure that you understand what benefits you get. Is it a final salary that you get, or is there any other benefits that you get as part of your pension? The benefits are really important because the value that you get given of your pension can increase depending on the benefits. So that's why it's a bit more complicated. You will need to give this information to your ex as part of disclosure, just like you have to give information about your bank accounts and investments and anything else, any other assets you've got in your name. You also need to give the value of your pension to your ex as well, and they need to do the same. So you need to swap information about your assets, including pensions, with each other. Once you have done that, then you need to look at all of the assets that are there and look at the best way of dealing with everything, not just the pensions in isolation. The courts often will leave pensions out. They'll deal with everything else first because that's all liquid assets or as liquid as can be. And then the pensions could be dealt with afterwards. Sometimes there is no real option but to get the pensions involved straight away because there isn't a lot of assets. It may just be the family home, which maybe doesn't have a lot of equity in it, and then a pension. So if that's the case, then obviously you need to look at the pension straight away as well. Dealing with pensions, it is really complicated because it's not an asset that you can fully understand. It's not an asset like any other. And there's so many different variables around pensions as well. So that's why you need to get proper guidance around your whole settlement, as well as how to deal with pensions. It might be that you want to work with a financial advisor to work out what your retirement is going to look like. It may be that you need to understand your retirement before you make a decision on this. Because if you don't have a pension pot of your own, then it may be important to get some provision on retirement. You might need a pension expert if your pension is sizable. And obviously that depends for different people. So I talk my clients through this carefully to get so they have an idea of what is a fair settlement. And then we need to put you in touch with the right professionals to deal with as well. So that's what I wanted to share around pensions. I hope that's been useful. It's always good to know from you what you thought about that and what takeaways you got from that talk. There's lots of ways of connecting with me. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and my website is there, but also on YouTube. So I do need to add that here as well. And I'm sure Nelma will give you the details for all of that as well in the chat box, because he is very efficient and he's putting things there in the chat box as we speak. And LinkedIn, yes, definitely. Forgot about LinkedIn. Okay, so I hope that was useful for you. I have to go through it quite quickly just because of time. So I am just now going to look at your questions. If you've got questions, obviously put them in the box and I'll definitely try and get to them. Okay, so let me get to the first question. So the first question I've got here is, would the papers still be valid in the court? And you started divorce proceedings in 21. This is under the old system of divorce because the divorce changed in April 22. The court have slowly been disregarding the old cases. They may not be valid anymore, but the best way of finding out is to telephone the court. You need to call the divorce unit, and they will tell you if that case is still valid. If it isn't valid, you'll need to start again under the new law. I'll be talking about that on Monday, actually, on this four-day course. So feel free to come along and I'll take you through how that works and the timescales as well. Next question. At what stage is the financial settlement topic supposed to be discussed and agreed with husband, ex-husband? There is no set framework for this. There's no supposed to. It really depends on you. It depends on your circumstances. Some people will talk about everything first before they've even started divorce proceedings. They'll let their husband know, ex-husband know that this is happening, or their ex-wife know that they've made this decision to get divorced. And actually then discussions happen from there as to what will we do with our finances? What's the plan? What could we put together? Some people reach an agreement even before they've taken any legal step. Maybe you've even reached agreement around your children if you've got children, but you've taken no legal steps, and that's okay because you can take the legal steps afterwards. Some people need it to be different. They need to start the divorce application first, because when you start the divorce application, maybe the other person gets to the realization that you mean business, that you are serious about this. And often, if you've been talking about divorce for many years, the other person, when you mention it again this time, they may not believe you because you've discussed it so many times. And maybe you've said, I'm going to start. I think divorce is the only answer. That's it. I'm done. I'm getting divorced. And you've never done anything about it. So maybe they won't believe you this time. And you have to start your divorce application for them to know you are serious. And the discussions on finances could come after that. Some people finalize their divorce and then start discussions on the finances. And obviously, each element has a legal consequence. So you need to think things through depending on your circumstances. Everything I do with my clients is never the way that it has to be, because it's not always that way. There's lots of ways of doing things, and we need to find the best way for you and then do it that way, but make sure you're protected legally throughout. And as long as you are protected, there are lots of ways of doing this, and you should do it your way. So hopefully that answers your question. Does having a pension sharing agreement still allow for a clean break? Yes, because you are actually transferring the pension share as soon as your divorce final order has arrived. So once you have got your pension share order stamped by the court, you then have to apply for your final order. And then this pension sharing order is sent to your pension company, and they will send the money over to your pension or to the other person's pension. And so that's a clean break because the money has already been transferred. A clean break isn't the case when you say, for example, do pension attachment order, because that sharing of income will happen on retirement. So pension sharing is a clean break. That's why courts like it. They're always trying to get you to a clean break if possible. Sometimes you can have a clean break on all the assets, but not a clean break on income, because, for example, there may be young children and maintenance is still something that needs to be paid. So you've got a clean break on assets, but not a clean break on income. My initial divorce application has been accepted and will be finalized in November. When should I start looking at the finances? Does this have to be sorted out before it's all finalized in November? So I've answered parts of that question. People do it very differently. But the one bit that I need you to know as part of your question is that generally we advise that you should apply for your final order of divorce. So that final thing that keeps you, that will end your marriage, you should only get that once you have a financial consent order stamped by the court, generally. It's advisable on general terms to do it that way. For some people, it doesn't really matter, but generally that's the rule. So I would say generally you should get your financial consent order submitted to the court once you have got your conditional order, and then get your final order afterwards. And if you are going to do it that way, then now is the time to start talking about finances and start reaching agreements if you can. Can you remove the pension element of the financial settlement if you agree other mechanisms for dividing the assets? You can say that we'll sell the family home and split the proceeds. You keep your savings, I'll keep my savings. You keep your pension, I'll keep my pension. But we have to look at how that is from a point of view of, is that fair? Because one person may have a lot of savings and a bigger pension, and the other person hasn't got a lot of savings, hasn't got a lot of pension asset either. And so that might not be a fair settlement. And the other thing is the court also looks at the numbers, just so you're aware. The court will want to know how you are sharing assets, and they will look at what you've got now, what you will have once this agreement has been effected, and is that fair? And so it could be a fair way of looking at it that you keep your own pensions. But as long as it is fair, then obviously that could work. And yes, the recording will be available later. Is it best to transfer an old pension from past employers to your current pension employer? I'm not a pensions expert, so I'm not going to be able to answer that question. You could speak to your current pension provider and ask them. Generally, they won't do that, but I wouldn't know the answer to that question. The first thing is speak to your current pension provider and see if that's possible for them. They may say, no, we don't do that. And then you'll know. If they say, yes, we can do that, then you might need to get some financial advice to make sure that you are doing the best thing. What's your fixed fee? So the fixed fee for the program is £2,500, and it's fixed for 6 months. Are the other experts able to offer personalized advice as part of your program cost? So we have other experts coming in. They will give you one-to-one time according to what they offer. So they do have offers for clients that are on the program. And obviously you would need to speak to the expert. I don't get anything from them for them giving you an offer or you working with them. So although they will guide you to some element, if you need then further help from them, you would need to get their fees for the further work. So they will offer something as part of the program. And depending on the expert, they have their own different offers. I'll be joining and listening in next week. Great. Be lovely to have you there. Do you work with litigants in person? Yes. So everything I do is I'm not representing you as a lawyer. I'm there as your guide and your support, excuse me, as you are doing it yourself. And that includes court proceedings. So if you are a litigant in person, which means you are going through court proceedings without a solicitor, then I can guide you on how to prepare the documents, what you need to do when, and I can review those documents as well. So it does help you as a litigant in person. If you need to book somebody to attend the hearing, then I can give you suggestions of barristers who can attend with you. So I've got a direct message. I'm not quite sure I understand it. I think you mean as part of a proper separation, can you be separated and still living under the same roof and doing things separately? Yes, you can be. So lots of people, especially these days, they live together while they're going through this process because maybe you can't afford for the other person to move out while the divorce is going through. Maybe that will happen once you've decided everything. Sometimes people don't want to move out. They want to feel they've got to protect their assets. Maybe if you're both paying towards the mortgage, it's important that you live there. So for different reasons, people live together while they're going through the divorce process. So yes, you can be separated and living under the same roof, but it depends on what you think separation means. Okay, so I'm going to take the next question as the last one. How can we deviate from the fairness aspect? My ex-husband has never held down a job and he started his own business that failed, yet we are still saying he should retire with the same salary as me. It's a really difficult situation because the court sees you as partners. And I can see that financially you've not been partners in paying into the family finances. And you might say that as part of the considerations that need to be taken into account, like age, children's ages, who's the main carers, health, that you would say that the non-contribution financially is part of bad behavior. And behavior can be taken into account, albeit limited, but it still can be taken into account. So you may say that's part of the considerations you want included that financially they've not contributed. Okay, so I'm glad you found that informative. Thank you very much for letting me know. And I'd love some feedback from all of you in the group, if that's okay, to find out how you found today. Did you find it useful, the information I presented to you? Was it useful me answering questions for you? It's so good for me to know how you are finding these sessions so that I can make sure that it's valuable for you, but also the feedback can help me improve as well. I like your calm manner and compassion. Thank you so much. Always nice to hear that. And obviously, you know, as a lawyer, as somebody who's been through it, I bring legal experience as well as personal experience to the work that I do. And I would love it if you would join me next week. So if you're not signed up to that, do sign up to joining me. You can stay anonymous again as normal in the group, and you'll get replays if you can't attend live. So it would be so nice to see you there. Thank you so much for all of your comments. You find my voice calming and you appreciate my honesty and openness. Thank you so much, Sharon, for sharing that. And I'm glad that you guys are finding this useful. It's always good to get that feedback. I try and present as much as I can in the short time that I have. But it's always great for you to keep in touch and connect with me in different places as well. So you can subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can always see any updates, any videos that I'm sharing. I'll be growing that and adding more tips and value there as well. So feel free to join that. It's always good to get you subscribing to that too. Lovely to have you here. So good to see you all. Lovely to see the new people coming in. And I will catch up with you all next week on Monday. Reach out if you want to book a call and if you have any questions. Thank you so much. And I will see you soon. Take care. Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.